Sometimes these things happen in MMA.
What's going on, fight fans? Welcome to These Things Happen in MMA. The goal of this channel is to highlight crazy and spectacular moments that have made mixed martial arts into what it is today. Don't forget to follow the channel on social media at These Things MMA, and the link to my merch shop is in the description below. In this episode, I'm going to talk about one of the biggest and most important events in mixed martial arts history. This is the story of UFC 100. Believe it or not, there used to be a time in the UFC's history where there wasn't a fight card almost every weekend. In 2009, fans were more accustomed to about one show every month, and MMA was still looked at as a niche sport in most people's eyes. However, UFC 100's stacked card was able to capture mainstream attention and was by far the most anticipated event of the year.
Can you feel the anticipation building for this mega event?
I felt the anticipation at UFC 92. Fans were coming up to me, asking me about 100, who was going to fight, what's it going to be, what special things were we going to do. We knew we had to put something special together, and some things just fell into place. Like Mir and Lesnar was supposed to happen last month. It ended up getting changed, so we put it on this card. The way we look at 100 is a milestone for us. It's our 100th pay-per-view, our 100th big fight, but it's just the beginning.
A large portion of the hype was due to superstar Brock Lesnar, who was attempting to unify his heavyweight title in the main event against interim champ Frank Mir. The co-main event drew a lot of attention as well, with welterweight GOAT George St-Pierre defending his title against Brazilian contender Thiago Alves. The third marquee fight on the card was a middleweight title eliminator between top contenders Dan Henderson and the Count Michael Bisping.
It's the biggest night in UFC history, with 2 world titles on the line and a card for the ages. Bud Light presents UFC 100. Live Saturday, July 11th from the Mandalay Bay Event Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. Only on pay-per-view.
In addition to the main attractions, the rest of the card was littered with some intriguing names. There was the talented 21-year-old light heavyweight prospect Jon Jones. The return of former heavyweight champion and pioneer of the sport, Mark Coleman. The UFC debut of Japanese megastar Yoshihiro Akiyama. And the always tough welterweight title contender, John Fitch. UFC 100 took place on July 11th, 2009 and featured commentators Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg.
Matt Grice set to face off against Shannon Gugerty here at UFC 100.
Early fans in attendance saw Shannon Gugerty open the show with an impressive guillotine choke on Matt Grice that ended the fight at 2 minutes and 36 seconds into the first round. The win would be the biggest of Shannon's career before retiring in 2012. After the loss, Matt Grice was cut from the promotion. However, he later returned for a second stint, going 1-2 in that span and retiring in 2013.
This middleweight matchup between Ultimate Fighter competitors CB Dollaway and Filthy Tom Lawlor.
Lawlor was fresh off his time on Tough Season 8 and making his middleweight debut, while Dollaway had just come off of 2 impressive first-round finishes. The fight ended quicker than the previous contest as Lawlor showed off a guillotine of his own and choked out Dollaway just 55 seconds in. Both men would trade wins and losses for the bulk of their careers, however Lawlor remained a fan favorite for his personality and hilarious weigh-in moments. He last competed for the PFL in 2021, receiving a unanimous decision over Jordan Young. Dollaway's last fight came in 2019 when he lost to Yuri Prochazka for Rizin's light heavyweight championship.
Welterweight battle, Dong Yong Kim and TJ Grant.
Originally, Kim was scheduled to face UFC veteran Jonathan Goulet, however he dislocated his shoulder 3 weeks prior and was pulled from the card. Although technically undefeated, Kim lost his previous bout at UFC 94, however it was later overturned to a no contest when Carl Parisian tested positive for a banned substance. Grant held an impressive 14-2 record, with his latest victory over Ryo Chonin coming by way of split decision at UFC 97. The South Korean set the tone of the fight early and dominated the contest with his superior grappling. An illegal upkick from TJ in the second round would result in a point deduction, and the contest ended with 30-26 scorecards in favor of Kim. The stun gun would have another 14 fights in the UFC, with a record of 10-4 before retiring in 2017 after his loss to Colby Covington. In 2013, Grant would eventually move down to lightweight, where he went on a 5-fight run that saw him become the #1 contender. Unfortunately, TJ started receiving concussion-like symptoms shortly after, which forced him to retire without ever competing for the lightweight title.
Miller and Danzig, Mandalay Bay Event Center, here we go!
At the time, Miller had a 13-2 record, with his only losses coming at the hands of Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard. Danzig was 18-6-1, coming off of 2 hard losses to Clay Guida and Josh Neer. When the fight was underway, Miller quickly overwhelmed Danzig and was able to open a cut on the forehead from an elbow strike. The cut bled profusely, and by the end of the contest, the canvas was covered with Danzig's DNA. When the scorecards were read, Miller easily won the contest by unanimous decision for his 3rd victory in the organization. Jim Miller is still competing in the UFC and has numerous records with the promotion. Accolades that include the most fights and wins in the lightweight division, as well as being tied with Donald Cerrone for the most bouts in UFC history with 37 at the time of this recording. Danzig would trade wins and losses before going on a 3-fight skid and being cut by the promotion in 2014.
A battle at 205, Jones and O'Brien.
In roughly a year and a half's time, Jones would find himself in his third UFC fight with an overall record of 8-0. On the other hand, O'Brien was a promising heavyweight who hit a rough patch and recently dropped down a division.
We talked about your rise, how quick it's come together here, and then you're on freaking the biggest card in the history of the sport.
You know, I have no way of putting it, but to say it's an absolute blessing. You know, there's a lot of great fighters out there, a lot of guys who are much better than I am. For the fact, you know, that I have made this card is just, it's an awesome thing. I'm so excited about it.
All right, Jake O'Brien, matchup-wise, I can't see you being intimidated. You're going against another wrestler, and style-wise, you know, he's a pretty decent striker, has a good chin.
When it comes to a stand-up fight, I've been training harder. You know, I have no clue how much better I've gotten until I go out there and see what happens. You know, everything's about destiny, and I've trained really hard. I feel as if I deserve to win this fight, and I guess we're just going to have to go and see exactly what's going to happen.
When the fight started, Jake was looking to push the pace in the first round and was aggressive early. However, John remained elusive and landed strikes from the outside. In the second, John landed a spinning elbow that stunned Jake and eventually led to a darts choke, ending the fight at 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Problems both inside and outside of fighting have plagued John's career. Regardless though, he's gone on to become what many consider to be the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. Jones has ruled over the light heavyweight division for the better part of a decade and is currently awaiting to make his heavyweight debut sometime in 2022. After the loss, O'Brien would leave the UFC and have 5 more fights before retiring in 2012.
Light heavyweight matchup. Former UFC champion Mark Coleman take on the American Psycho.
Coleman was the first ever UFC heavyweight champion and recently began his second run in the company at light heavyweight. Bonnar had just come off a loss to the previously mentioned John Jones and was looking to get back on track against the big name. The bulk of the fight would play out with Coleman landing takedowns and controlling Bonnar on the ground without much resistance. After 3 grueling rounds, the 44-year-old Coleman won a unanimous decision and earned his first victory in the UFC since 1997. Before retiring, Coleman would compete one last time in a losing effort against Randy Couture at UFC 109. Bonnar would eventually leave the UFC and join Bellator in 2014. He's since retired, however his epic 3-round war against Forrest Griffin in 2005 remains as one of the most important fights in MMA history, and is often credited with saving the sport.
Amazing journey. What's your favorite moment?
I think my favorite one was UFC 100. I'd never been losing and came back, and that's the first time I lost the first round, and I had to really dig deep. I'm 44 years old. It's the new UFC. It's not the old school. I wanted to, prove that I could still do this, and that victory there was. They were all emotional, but that one was probably a little tear-jerking even, because it was very important to me to come back and show the fans.
Akiyama and Belcher.
This was the highly anticipated UFC debut of Akiyama, who was the first and only middleweight champion of K1's organization Heroes, which was later rebranded as Dream. Meanwhile, Belcher had been grinding in the UFC for nearly 3 years and was 4-1 in his last 5 fights. From the get-go, the contest was a stand-up war and saw both fighters exchange hard shots over the course of 15 minutes. In the end, the victory would go to Akiyama as he edged out a narrow split decision. Although an exciting fighter, he'd be cut from the UFC in 2015 after compiling a record of 2-5 in the promotion. Belcher retired in 2015 and has since renewed his focus on coaching at his gym in Alabama.
Bisping and Henderson will finally do battle.
The two were coming off of their stint as coaches on season 9 of Tough, and the time on the show really helped to build more interest in the fight. Dan was already considered to be a legend, having fought numerous greats in the sport in both Pride and UFC. Bisping was the top middleweight contender with a 17-1 record. The bout was widely considered to be a #1 contenders fight, with the winner getting a crack at reigning champion Anderson Silva. When the contest started, Henderson pressed the action early and was the clear aggressor throughout the first round. Bisping started to come alive in the second, until then Henderson pulled off one of the most spectacular knockouts in MMA history.
No, I wasn't planning on that. I was planning on taking him down a little bit. I felt like I had him hurt a couple times in the first round and just was patient. I felt that I'd landed a solid shot and saw him going down and right away jumped on top of him to land another just to make sure that the fight was over. It felt great to land that second shot, probably more than the first shot.
You get caught with a good one, and with the small gloves, if you get caught on the chin, you're going to sleep, especially with a fighter of Dan Henderson's caliber. I thought I was doing okay. I think he won the first round, but it was closer than what a lot of people think. And the second round, I think I was in control of the second round. I was picking him off, I was landing some good shots, but I made a mistake. For me personally, obviously it was a big deal losing. I obviously didn't want to lose the fight, and I was devastated. But in terms of getting back in there and fighting again, it's no big deal in that respect. I think I could beat Dan Henderson on another day. It wasn't my night that night.
After UFC 100, Dan Henderson would leave the promotion and join rival organization Strikeforce. He'd eventually return to the UFC and receive Hall of Fame honors before retiring in 2016 at the age of 45. Although a devastating loss, Bisping would manage to capture the middleweight title and enjoy a Hall of Fame career of his own before retiring in 2017.
The welterweight title is on the line. The champion, the challenger.
GSP was fresh off his classic performance against BJ Penn at UFC 94 and was now defending his title for a third time. While GSP was building his legacy, Alves had been tearing through the welterweight division for the past 3 years, compiling a 7-fight win streak with 5 finishes. The contest began with George using his jab and controlling the distance, making use of the 6-inch reach advantage. Anytime Thiago would find success on the feet, GSP would nullify the striking by using his dominant wrestling and ground skills. The remaining 4 rounds were basically a rinse and repeat of the first, and GSP easily retained his belt, winning by unanimous decision. The victory secured George as the consensus #1 fighter on the planet, and he would go on to set numerous records in the welterweight division by the end of his career. In 2017, he also became the 4th fighter in UFC history to capture a title in 2 different weight classes, when he won the middleweight strap from none other than Michael Bisping. Thiago Alves would have 15 more fights with the promotion before retiring from MMA in 2019. Although he recently made a resurgence in boxing promotion Bare Knuckle FC, becoming their middleweight champion in June of 2021.
Brock Lesnar, Frank Mir, UFC heavyweight title fight.
This bout was a huge rematch from their previous meeting at UFC 81, which saw Mir lock in a knee bar that ruined Lesnar's UFC debut. The two were originally supposed to headline UFC 98, however Mir sustained an injury during training that postponed the bout to UFC 100. Promotion for this event focused heavily on the bad blood between the two, and the delay only heightened anticipation.
Forward to this upcoming fight against Frank, and I'm a little disappointed that it got pushed back. In my mind, is Frank really hurt, or is he just scared? Or I think he understands that the position that I had him in the first fight, and I don't think it's going to change much in the second one.
Interesting. He's been very vocal about this next fight and how, he feels that you have his belt at this point. And what are your thoughts when you start to hear him mouth off a little bit about, hey, I'm coming to get my belt?
Well, I would feel the same way. I mean, he won a make-believe belt from, Nogueira, and he is a former champion. But there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm the current champion.
30 seconds into the contest, Brock secured a takedown and landed some hard shots on Mir while remaining in top position for the entirety of the first round. Heading into the second, Mir was having success on the feet until Lesnar once again took control and secured another takedown. It didn't take long before a barrage of ground strikes from Lesnar had Mir in trouble, forcing Herb Dean to stop the fight.
And it is all over! He's out! Brock Lesnar is the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion!
After the contest was over, a still fired up Brock Lesnar began yelling in Frank Mir's face and proceeded to flip off the crowd. This fight is also responsible for the iconic image of Lesnar foaming at the mouth, as well as his infamous post-fight speech regarding Budweiser that's since been pulled from UFC Fight Pass.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
At the time, Budweiser was a longtime supporter of the UFC, and Dana White couldn't afford having his biggest star clash with his biggest sponsor. Lesnar would later apologize at the post-fight press conference and made a point to drink a Budweiser in front of the media. Since the event, Brock bounced back and forth between WWE and the UFC, having only 4 more MMA fights. His last bout came at UFC 200, where he won a unanimous decision over Mark Hunt that was later overturned when he tested positive for a banned substance. Frank Mir would make another run at the title before hitting a rough patch and testing positive for a banned substance of his own. In 2016, he was released from his UFC contract and had a short stint with Bellator before moving on to boxing and commentating. Mir also holds many UFC records, including the most finishes and submissions in heavyweight history, among many others.
Black trunks for Fitch, gray trunks for Paulo Thiago.
A lot of fans might not remember that John Fitch vs. Paulo Thiago took place after the main event at UFC 100. Originally, the bout was supposed to be the second fight on the main card, however due to there being 2 5-round title bouts, the UFC was afraid they'd go over the allotted pay-per-view time limit and the decision was made to postpone the contest. At this point in Fitch's career, he was widely regarded as one of the best welterweights on the planet, and prior to this he was 9-1 in the promotion, with his only loss coming to GSP at UFC 87. His opponent, Paulo Thiago, was an 11-0 undefeated prospect, who also moonlighted as a special forces officer in Brazil. As the contest was underway, Fitch displayed solid striking and dominated with his wrestling as he had done so many times before. Thiago wouldn't do much in the fight, and Fitch was close to getting a finish as the final horn sounded. Despite winning numerous fights after his victory at UFC 100, Fitch would never challenge for a UFC title again. Instead, he'd be released from the organization in 2013, where he went on to join World Series of Fighting in Bellator before retiring in 2020. Thiago would have mixed results in the UFC and was released in 2014. When the event was over, Akiyama vs. Belcher was given Fight of the Night honors, with Knockout of the Night going to Dan Henderson and Submission of the Night to Tom Lawlor. Being that this was UFC 100, the bonus money was increased from $50,000 to $100,000. At the time, the event was also the most bought pay-per-view in company history, with a buy rate of 1.6 million. UFC 100 was a huge milestone for the company, but it also felt like a celebration of how far mixed martial arts had come in such a small amount of time. In 2009, MMA was still looked at as a niche sport, and this blockbuster event was monumental in terms of social significance and drawing in new fans. Without UFC 100, the sport wouldn't be where it is today, so let us never forget this historic fight card and one of the best MMA events of all time. As always, I posted some related material in the description for those interested. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below with a topic you'd like to hear me cover in a future episode. Don't forget to follow the channel on social media at These Things MMA, and the link to my merch shop is in the description below. Thanks for watching and supporting my channel.
Your memories of 100?
I got lots of memories, but I guess the one that sticks out the most is solidifying my heavyweight championship, avenging the loss against Frank Mir, being very excited to get my hand raised at the end, and saying some things that are very memorable.
What kind of beer did you drink that night, just for the record?
I actually had 2 different kinds that night. One for the public to see and one for me to enjoy.
And stop asking him questions.
Sometimes these things happen in MMA.